Hi, I'm Doug from Worship Musician Magazine, and thanks so much for joining us. In this webinar, we have a wonderful panel of people who are going to present on their respective verticals around streaming and production as it relates to the house of worship. Each one of the panelists is going to present on a vertical. Then we're going to take a couple of questions around that vertical. And then at the very end, we're going to do a little bit of a round robin answering all of your questions. We're going to kick things off with George Ross from CCLI. He's the Chief Operating Officer. George, thanks so much for joining us.
Streaming is this weird mix of all of these different rights. So when you're streaming, it's just not one right that comes into place. And so I'm just going to paint this picture before we talk about kind of what you can and can't do. So in some ways, you're like a radio station and a TV station, and you're a distributor because you're showing lyrics and then you're playing a song, but it's also like a live performance, but it's also like a whole bunch of kind of sort of things. Right, and that's just on the right side of streaming to get into kind of the just kind of outline the complexity around it. And then you get the platforms themselves, right, which then adds a whole nother layer. So say it's YouTube or Facebook, for example, they have these agreements that they have to help stop piracy and those other things on there. So they have their content ID platforms, and then they have these other agreements in place that's supposed to go either block illegal use of content on there, and all that other kind of stuff. So we have to separate kind of what the right sets are that are covered under the legality of streaming, and then there's the platform section itself too. We'll cover kind of both of those things here. And I'll leave an adequate time for discussion and questions because that's where the best stuff actually comes out in this. So under the law, you know, the church only has 2 exemptions under U.S. copyright law. This varies by country. So if there's people around the world, it will vary by the territory or country that you're viewing from. But generally, it's the performance of a song during the context of a religious service and the display of a dramatical musical work are the 2 exceptions under copyright law. And those happen to be located, that happens to be tied to a physical location. There's actually some clarification by the Congressional Research Office asking about the streaming aspect. And streaming is not covered under that copyright piece of the copyright exemption. It's just actually, I'm singing a song in the context of our religious service is generally the things that are exempt under there. So everything else falls under copyright. So whether that is, you know, the streaming or even if you're streaming the song online, and that's where, you know, companies like CCLI and a few others actually come in, is they work with all the publishers and the master holders, and they simplify that grant of rights so you can do the streaming and not worry about all the legality behind you. But then it gets a little more complex when you add things like masters underneath there. So things like MultiTracks, or if you're doing pre or post-service roles in a streaming thing, which is a whole nother set of rights that get involved, because as anyone who's watched a YouTube video that's got a takedown notice on it because it contained a snippet of other music, you know, that's getting into, because now you're getting into some other rights around that. So it's complex, but just kind of understand that there are a couple basic grants that are to churches, but they're kind of limited to the church itself in its house of worship context. As soon as you start streaming, it's a different right set, and there are companies that help solve that part. And that's a separate conversation between what the platforms that you're streaming on allow under their agreements with record labels, content owners, and geo restrictions sometimes as well over what's allowed in there. So I wish I had a great easy answer for making it easy for everyone. The only thing I can suggest is, you know, there's some great licensing partners like CCLI, like CCS, who can help you find out those things for yourself. And just so you know, we're also working with Facebook and other companies like that to help address house of worship specific issues around like takedown notices and copyright claims and all those other type of things. So anyway, Doug, that was a very messy answer to a very complex thing, but we help you solve it. And hopefully I set up the complexity of doing it a little bit, which I'm sure everyone will speak into the other parts. But I'm ready for questions. and
Hey,
roundtable.
George.
Yeah.
Hey, George. We have one question from Jason. He says that they're using Planning Center and they're trying to link CCLI to Planning Center so they can have proper reporting. Is this possible?
Okay, reporting question. Oh, great, I love reporting questions. There's some great internet memes about CCLI reporting as well, if anyone's ever seen those. So we don't actually have an integration for anyone for reporting. I'll explain why just succinctly. Is because so many partners integrate with us. We don't allow like the third-party input of reporting. What Planning Center does is they generate a report that you can use to speed up your input entry when you are in a reporting period for CCLI. So you have to go pull up their reporting, use that as a basis to do entry over in our system. And the reason is because people who integrate their technology with us tend to have 2 to 3 things. They might have Planning Center, they might have a presentation software, and they might also have like a stage display type of thing. And we need to get accurate of what actually happened on that Sunday or the activities, and we want a single stream of that, not like 5 or 6 streams coming in, so the credit counting can be correct back to the songwriters. So anyway, so there is no like direct link in. All it is a report that Planning Center has for you to pull up that you use when you're doing your reporting inside of CCLI.
Great. Matthew has a question that his church has an issue where they record and posted a public domain hymn on Facebook, but it got flagged because Sony Music Entertainment claimed their video. What do they do to avoid these situations?
Okay, so Facebook's interesting. So Facebook's agreements are, well, on public domain songs, this is something that's a broader issue with content ID systems. So sometimes there might be a derivation that contains public domain songs on it that might meet the criteria for a content match under their content ID system, and it auto-generates some of those copyright claims. This is a broader issue even across YouTube and Facebook. So they can contact Facebook around that. There's also on Facebook, understand that their back-end agreements, they're not intended to be a streaming service like a Spotify or anything. And so they do have agreements with rights holders, but there's also an overall percentage of music that can be in their videos that has copyright, that can be copyright ID. So the public domain one, that's an error on the ID system, nothing that the church did. They can contact Facebook and just say that, and just kind of make theirs say that it's an invalid claim. So anyway, it's an imperfect system because it's automated. I mean, I wish I had a cleaner answer for that.
Thank you, George. Soren would like to ask, can you please provide a short overview of the CCL licenses that can help with online performances?
Sure. There's really kind of just 3 main ones, 2 main ones to the online. There's just the CCL, which is our core licensing, which kind of underpins what we do, which is the church copyright license, which kind of covers the underlying for the lyrics and for aids in congregational singing. The second one is our streaming and podcasting license, CSL, and that enables you to basically post your recordings or live stream on any platform or podcast platform. There's also a third one that might work for them, which is a rehearsal license, which allows you to make 2nd generation masters to send out to your team. So if you send an MP3 file via Planning Center or some other tools or email, it monetizes those masters, 2nd generation masters that aid in the rehearsal for your team to get ready for those things as well. So those would be the main ones that would be applicable in that scenario.
Great. Rick would like to know, do CCLI numbers need to be shown on song slides during streaming?
So according to our agreements, letter of the law, yes, but we're not an enforcement agency, and I don't, so I have to give them the official answer, which is according to your EULA, yes. According to who necessarily cares in a practical sense, I can stay silent on the topic.
All right. Dennis would like to ask, in the Philippines is not on CCLI. What do what we do is we record and produce covers of CCLI songs, recording every instrument split screen video, then is included on a 1-hour stream service on different platforms like Facebook and Vimeo. How does this classify, or are we allowed to share these on Facebook?
So outside of CCLI, you're just running into some of the platform licensing for those underlying platforms. So, and we do sell we have global agreements, so we do sell licensing into every country, both streaming and CCL licensing. So just to clear that part up. But the other thing is that is going to get around just the core licensing for the underlying rights of that song on that. So they basically made a master recording. And it's just a mode of distribution, which is different on that, right? So, so someone's going to make a copyright claim on that. Facebook may even do a takedown on it in that scenario, given kind of some of their underlying agreements. So it's not a clean answer, but it's kind of with the theme of everything else I've been talking about.
I'm going to do one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to Doug, and then we can continue with the webinar. But Joel wanted to ask, what's the best streaming software that also shares to multiple outlets?
There's actually a couple one. It's come on, the open source one. It's OBS, Open Broadcast System, is a great one. Open source, multi-platform, multi-endpoint, a ton of great tutorials online. One that simplifies it, I know Vimeo, if you're in their upper tier product that has live streaming, you get some software that gets bundled with that allows you to define multiple endpoints as well. But I would look into initially just like OBS. It's open source. A lot of churches use it. There's a ton of tutorials out there on it, and specifically for church as well.
Perfect. I'm going to hand it over to Doug, and we're going to continue our conversation.
George, thanks as always. One of my favorite people. We're both guitar fanatics, so we have that special bond between us. NAMM is a special place for George and I. We've spent many hours and many dollars there. By the way, we have a resource. I'm going to share a couple links over the course of this. If you go to wmmag.info/ and I'll put up a link, WM Streaming Handbook. We put together a huge range of resources from a number of our friends on here, like MultiTracks and CCLI, that answer and address a number of these things. We also had some stuff from our friends over at Life.Church. So you guys have been amazing partners, all of you. So with that said, Kristian Ponsford, we have a very treasured relationship with our friends at MultiTracks because we are equally passionate about the things that we do. We're fellow creatives, really getting a chance to come alongside churches and help them create. So in so doing, we get a chance to be really involved at the music side of it. So one of the most exciting things about the role that MultiTracks has played is they've allowed teams to fill in the background when maybe things are a little bit lean. They're a great rehearsal vehicle. But one of the things I'm most excited about is how MultiTracks is seeing the role they're playing now with these stripped down versions of churches, and also how it's going to be moving forward as we redefine a church model. So that said, I do not want to infringe on all the genius things that Kristian's going to have to say. So with that said, Kristian Ponsford, please take it away. Kristian from MultiTracks.
Thank you, Doug. Hope you can hear me okay. My internet connection is coming and going as you guys are talking. So firstly, thank you for the invite of being here. Doug, guys from NAMM, thank you for putting this together. What an incredible resource. I almost want to be on the other side and listen to all the clever things that are said rather than sat here trying to come up with good ideas for you to hear as well. Also, interestingly, I will refer to my company as MultiTracks. You guys might call it MultiTracks. I know that's a translation issue, and I may not or may not have subtitles as I'm talking, so forgive me as I work through this. Let me take you back to a pre-COVID era, if you can remember what that felt like to be in church in those times. And we've been having ongoing conversations. So at MultiTracks.com, we represent in excess of 600 master record owners of their masters. And we take those resources and make them available for churches to do a variety of things with them. And one of the things that we've been talking to both our users and our partners is around this giving of permission for people to take those original multi-tracks and take them online with their streaming. So obviously it's a need that's been there for several years. It's ever increasing. And then we hit this interesting period of time, which has caused chaos in our global world for sure, but it's also driven a lot of creativity and a lot of incredible, exciting conversations to come out of that need. And in that time, it became obvious that more and more churches needed to stream than maybe it ever had before. And the need for having something around a license for the use of those multi-tracks was obviously apparent. And I'm really, really thankful for the partners that we work with, because in a matter of days, 600 master owners and record labels signed off on a gratis license, so a free temporary license, to allow users of multi-tracks to take those stems and use them in their online service. And we are incredibly grateful for those churches and those record labels to resource and work with other churches to do so. So it's great to have the opportunity to thank them again publicly for that. So that being said, that you still need to partner that with the other licensing that George has been talking about, dependent on the territory that you're in, and that doesn't negate for the need for that streaming license, but it simply gives you this gratis license to take those master recordings in this period of COVID-19. So that being said, there's a couple of things that I think are worth talking about when using multi-tracks online. And one of the things that we always say when we're coaching worship leaders in approaching leading worship with tracks is to make sure that you retain this sense of sonic authenticity. So what I mean about that is, if I was to walk into your church and I couldn't see a piano player, but I could hear the piano line of King of Kings by Hillsong, or I couldn't see a guitar player, but I could hear that screaming guitar solo, there's something in that that maybe feels a little bit inauthentic in the way that that technology is being used. So we often say that if you can see an instrument, your brain is very happy to hear multiples of that instrument, if that makes sense. So if I was to see a piano on stage or see a keyboard on stage, my brain is much more comfortable to hear a variety of sounds coming from that source. And I think that's incredibly highlighted and amplified in the online streaming world as well, this idea of sonic authenticity. If I was to lead you in worship from this room and you can hear all of the drum parts and all of the keys parts and all of the guitars parts, and I'm sat here just with my acoustic and 4 chords, there's maybe something in that that feels a little bit less authentic than it could. So we often talk around this idea of sonic authenticity. And it's in light of that, and in light of the current need, that we spoke again to some of our producers that we work with, our team in-house at MultiTracks, and we made a resource called Living Room Sessions available. And they're simply stripped down arrangements of maybe your most favorite songs, perfectly designed for leading with a small band or with a solo worship leader. So things like drum loops rather than drum kits, or sub bass rather than bass guitar, or little bits of electronic guitar swells or loops and pads, and this supplementary sound that sits really nicely in the mix. So those are one of the things that might be worth checking out in this time of being able to still fill out your sound, but do it with a sense of sonic authenticity. The other top tip, or the other thing that's really useful to have, and this alludes back to what George was saying earlier, is in your attempt to stream, don't sound too much like the original recording. So obviously we're aware that we can give you a license, you can have your streaming license, you can have your gratis license, you're legally fine to stream online, but Facebook or YouTube might not know that you have that streaming license or that permission to do so. And they have an algorithm which is looking for the original recording to protect the songwriter from piracy. So if there's any part of your performance, your worship leading, that sounds too much like the original, we stand the chance of it having the famous takedown or something happening there, particularly in Facebook land. So what we tend to say there is, yes, absolutely use tracks, but make sure you're doing it to supplement your mix, or you're subtracting from those tracks, so we're not sounding just like the original at any one time. So again, if we go back to our King of Kings example from Hillsong, that piano intro is just the piano, string and pad. If I played that for, I think it's for 30 seconds before I was to start singing, there is a chance I would trigger off that takedown, because effectively I'm just playing the original. But if I was to mix that differently, maybe put my acoustic guitar on top of it, change the pad, then I'm a little bit safer. So we're just being careful with the algorithms. I think the final thing to say, and then maybe we'll take some questions, would be there's a lot of other tools that you can lean into before we go all the way to the full multi-track as well. So again, on our site and from a variety of other people, you might discover ambient pads. So ambient pads just fill out the 151 for the musicians. They fill out that sonic texture that sits underneath the chord sequence that you're playing, and a great way of filling out the sound, or a great way of just providing that glue to your team. Producers like Peter James from Hillsong, some of David Wellman from Life.Church, Sem Shap from Life.Church in the UK, have gone and made these incredible streaming music available, which you can tuck underneath your preaching. Or Sem's got one which is devised down by mood. So if you want something a bit more uplifting or a bit more encouraging, you can go and get the streaming music to put underneath the stream that you'll be doing. Peter's was recently used at Hillsong underneath one of Brian Houston's messages, and you can go again to the site and you can download those and you can use them in your online stream as well. So there's a whole variety of tools that you can reach out to just fill out the sound and make you a bit more comfortable as you embrace online streaming. So I think those would be my top tips. They would be my opening comments, Doug.
Thanks, Kristian, for the tips. So the first question that we have is, Michelle says she understands that MultiTracks has organized a temporary agreement with artists for the duration of COVID-19 pandemic, allowing churches to stream backing tracks in their performances. But normally, is there an easy way to obtain the rights for these? Or do we have to obtain the rights for each song separately?
It's a great question. So again, yeah, going back to pre-COVID-19, there wasn't an easy way to obtain the license to do that. And you simply would have had to contact each master owner. And as you can imagine, that kind of agreement is multiple parts. There's multiple people playing on multiple records, multiple songwriters, multiple master owners. My best advice for now would be to head to our website. There's a button that says COVID-19 at the top. And if you click that and put your email address in, we'll keep you updated as this landscape unfolds. We would love to be able to bring a licensing solution to, was it Michelle, the person that asked the question, to people like Michelle, so that you can continue to use your tracks post this pandemic. But for now, it's an ongoing conversation. And the best way to stay up to date would be to register on that page, and we'll keep you updated.
Perfect. And Joe was wondering, can you guys please post links here? I believe that's something you mentioned, a link in one of your conversations.
Yeah, I'm assuming Doug may well have a link of resources or something that he'll point to later on in the list. But if not, MultiTracks.com.
Whatever made you guess that. So yeah, I have created, the document right now is blank, but the URL will be WM as in Worship Musician Mag, WMMag.info/NAMM COVID-19 webinar, both with the dash between COVID-19 and without. So we'll put all the related resources on there. And yes, thank you for that. Great setup, Kristian. Questions?
Yes. Holland says, I have good video quality streaming. I'm having issues with the sound quality on live streaming. I have the best success in running through a board, then into a Focusrite Scarlett 2i4 into the computer. I'm still missing the produced sound that I hear from large venues. Can you walk through a basic audio chain for smaller churches to put together?
Yes, absolutely. But we would probably take most of this webinar to unpack that and do that well. I'm assuming this is okay. My suggestion would be to reach out to support at multitracks.com. Again, we can do that at the multitracks.com website. We've got a ton of resources on the site, but we can also point you to other resources that allow you to go deeper into that conversation and into looking into that. There's some nuances in the actual gear that you're using, the program that you're using to host that, the way you're getting that audio. So without understanding a little bit more about that chain, it would be difficult to answer it in detail in this webinar, but we'd love to connect afterwards to help you out there for sure. So support at multitracks.com is the email address, or you can find the support link on our website.
Great. Zach has a question. He appreciates the current ability to use MultiTracks in our online experience during COVID. Can you clarify if we will need to pull the recordings down after a certain date?
It's a great question. Again, the gratis license The gratis license, as we understand it, absolutely covers for those recordings to remain online. They don't need to be pulled down. For repeat, they've gone up there as a live stream. Of course, you still need the other licensing that allows you to do that. I'm simply referring to the gratis license for the MultiTracks, but there's not an intention from the people that have granted that gratis license to make you pull that down after COVID-19 ends.
Great. I'm going to give you one more question, and then we'll continue with our conversation.
Fantastic.
Steve has a question. He says, my observation is that YouTube and Facebook can pick up the melody, so trying not to sound too original is not often a successful strategy. Oh, that's not even a question. Sorry about that. Let's see. All right. Dennis has a question. How is it classified if we are able to record our own multi-tracks for our own church use, recorded professionally and streamed? If we kind of not make it sound close to the original, will it be less likely be a flag down?
Can you repeat that question one more time, just so I understand it and answer it well?
How is it classified if we are able to record our own multi-tracks for our own church use, recorded professionally and streamed? If we kind of make it not sound like the original, will it less likely be flagged down?
Yeah, I think I understand the question. So again, at multitracks.com, we resource with the original master content from the record labels and from our partners. So your Elevation, Bethel, Hillsong, etc. As they release an album, we will take those stems and we'll make them available for people to use in any one of the 12 keys, and they can mix to their taste and accompany the small band, live band, or normal church band with that. If you're recording your own content, that's probably more of a licensing question that goes back towards what George was talking about earlier. In terms of the algorithms, as I understand them, they're looking for the original, they're looking for parts of the master recording to protect that. So you shouldn't really trigger off the algorithms if you've recorded your own, unless you are an incredible producer and they sound exactly like the original. So that's probably the best non-answer I can give for that question.
Thanks, Kristian. We'll hand it off to Doug again.
Great, thank you.
That was awesome. So, okay, hang on a second. I got to pull up the right document here. Just one. Actually, so the neat thing is that I actually do not yet know Brandon, but I know a lot about, amongst other things, your amazing leader has just an amazing podcast. But the thing that Brandon is on here, Craig Gashel, that is, by the way, if you're looking for an amazing podcast to listen to for leadership, like it will make every muscle in your body strong. You're not going to watch TV before going to sleep. You're going to lead a more robust lifestyle. And this guy's just a rock star. So with that said, Brandon he's the Senior Director of Partnerships at Life.Church. The thing that I love about what they do, one of the things when we get to the tail end of this thing, I'm going to be talking about strategy. And I think a lot of us found that we didn't have a plan B. And what I love about what the Church Online platform is and was as an inception was a plan B solution in place before we needed a plan B. Something tells me these guys are as strategic as their leader. And the idea of creating a platform that's not just an online streaming platform for churches to be able to have a lot of the worry and the heartache of the drama that we experience when we're trying to log on to Facebook. And so we did a live stream thing with Lincoln Brewster. I did all my testing. I'm on Integrity's YouTube channel and I do all my testing. We did this test stream 10 minutes before, and then we go to go live. This service is not currently available. Please check back soon. I'm just like, seriously. So I'm going to make an analogy here and hopefully nobody's going to be offended. We know that there are not streaming gods, but if there were streaming gods, they would be angry, non-gracious gods who want to see you crash up against the rocks. And then as the ship is slowly sinking, the sharks are circling as you're cascading downwards towards your sheer death. So with that said, you guys have been providing an amazing solution from a church perspective for churches. So Brandon, would you be so kind as to take it away, please?
Yeah, that's awesome. Now that is a introduction right there. That's awesome. Um, I want to stop too and just say thanks. I was telling the team what I was on. They're like, "Are you sure you're supposed to be there?" Which I led worship here a long time ago, by the way. But it was a long time ago. So all that to say, told them sort of the context, and we were excited because as a church, because we do share a lot of resources, we get to work with a lot of churches. This is one of the number one questions, and I know we're all figuring it out together. So music is such an important piece. And so I just, man, thank you, NAMM, and all of you that are a part of this, figuring it out. This is a big deal for the church. It always has been, but I think, like I believe maybe it was Kristian was talking about, this is going to change us moving forward as a church. And that's what we get excited about. So, so the Church Online platform, we've actually had a platform that we've given away to churches for free for the last 12, 13 years. So, and the cool thing about that is that we just had a brand new version, and this is a completely God thing, but the timing was amazing in that we're on a version 4, which is a brand new version that was made for, get ready for it, scalability, simplicity, and stability. And so we literally came out of beta with 30 churches, and now, as you can imagine, and maybe many of you are using the platform, but just want you to know that it is available for free, but we don't treat it like a free product. We're very excited about what this is. We use it as well. And so I'll tell you a little bit about it for those that don't know, because I know this is a little out of the context, but it might be helpful for those that are trying to figure out where to put this stuff as we are as well. And there are some great things. Let me just say, thank God for Facebook and YouTube's and those that were ready. But there are some differences that might help you understand the Church Online platform. So the one great thing about the Church Online platform, when we first built it, the idea is really community around content, right? So we didn't want to just be a place where you could stream videos and even have content, but what does it look like, to have community around content? So this was from the very beginning when we launched even our initial online ministry. And so that's how the platform is built. So some examples for those that might, what does that mean? So when you have you're able to take your stream. So wherever you're streaming it from, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or Vimeo or wherever you're streaming your videos, whether it's live or simulated live, you can plug that really easily into the platform. And then you have all around it these tools that allow interactive connection. So there's chat, there's a public chat where people can chat. There's private chats like prayer. It allows for you as a church to have volunteers that sign up, and they have their own host tools in the background. So while they're hosting people that are coming to the church, they're able to talk to each other. They're able to provide ministry one-on-one chat, one-on-one prayer. They're able to greet people, welcome people in the chat. And then as features come, there's a bunch of great features coming out now. Just to give you an example around how it goes, that community around content, one of a group of features that we call moments. So if you think about this public chat beside your view, just like you might see in a Facebook Live or YouTube, you also have these ability as a church to create these moments that plug into the chat. So for example, a give moment, which is important during this time. And you don't want them to leave the experience, just like you would in a building. We're thinking like, how do we create an experience where people can be a part? Because giving is a huge piece of the experience of followers of Christ and those that are making steps. It's a big, big deal. So that's an example of how you can create this give moment. It plugs into the chat. You can click it. It allows for the church to pull up your own giving solution in like an iframe, a modal, so you could see it very easily in like your mobile, a mobile experience or on the desktop. And that's an example of a moment. So you could have a connect moment. Connection cards, communication cards, whatever you might, or a next step, you just want them to take an action. And instead of going outside of the service, they're able to stay in there. So there's connect moments and quote moments and give moments and different moments like that. So that's an example of some of the features that happen. There's great on the back end, you have all the data and analytics integrations with Google. I think there's a new feature launching this week with more integrations around that kind of stuff. So you can do that on the back end. And then just more things to how to help the chat, whether it's, just being able to be sure that all the chat's okay if you have somebody that's causing problems and things like that. So that's the idea of the Church Online platform. And our heart, I think if, and I can take questions if you guys haven't, but one of the big things that probably is unique about the platform is that it's from a church, by a church. It was built by a church for the church. So it literally is the church online platform. We are on, just so you know, we're on all these other platforms, but you can begin to see like the engagement is a lot different on the church online platform. Giving, connections, those next steps, those things that we really want them to take. And so for those that have, as you, Doug was talking about, have been forced in some cases into this online church, what's cool is they've seen that through these kinds of things. I'm excited to see what happens after this as we figure out the music, but we figure out the church in general on, okay, God, what are you calling us to do, each one of us in our unique ways, but what does online ministry look like? And so we are one of those places where that's just the platform. We have a lot of trainings and a lot of different content and resources that I'm sure you'll have links to, that we are constantly saying, how do you not only, here's a tool, but maybe here's some learnings that we're learning, or some things to think about when you think about online ministry. So that's why we're thankful for this resource. I'm sure we're pushing as well, because it's a huge need. So I think that gives a start. So yeah, leave it if there's any questions.
Thanks, Brandon. We have a few questions coming in. Dell is asking, what is the name of your free platform that the churches can use?
Yeah, so it's the churchonlineplatform.com is where you can get it. The great thing is it's the name of your church, so that'll be so just so it's completely customizable, obviously, for your church and for your ministry. But Church Online Platform, you look that up, and I'm sure that link will be with Doug's as well. But you can sign up there. It's very, very, very simple and quick. So we've done a few thousand churches now in a few weeks. So you guys are coming in at a good time.
Thanks, Brandon. Bruce wanted to ask, on your website, you suggest not using Facebook or YouTube for streaming. With you mentioning those now, does it work okay to use those platforms with Church Online? We're
in the webinar right now that is probably part of the problem, because we know that sometimes trying to figure out the streaming and the licensing, and so it's so good that we're trying to figure that out. That's one of the big reasons, to be honest, because people even use, I mean, we create music here. We get flagged with our own music. You guys know that's because there's labels involved and all this stuff. So it's just a fun challenge that we have. So yes, they do work with Facebook, even Facebook Live now and YouTube. And so those are, and a lot of churches use those solutions, but probably if you're seeing that would be one reason, is you just have to be aware of what we're talking about right now and be sure that you're set up so that you don't get flagged, because we don't want you taking down your church service. That's not a good thing.
Tom wanted to ask, would you have the ability in the future to translate to different languages?
Oh, that's a great question. So, and something I didn't mention, it's actually localized automatically for the attender and the hosts. So in other words, if you come in and you speak Korean and that's your first language that you're using as you come in, it will automatically translate via Google Translate, I believe, even the chat, all of the pieces of the service. And so that's, you don't, and I believe, oh man, I should have had this up. There are, 40, 50 languages that it's localized in, and that's in some of our support documentation. So the only thing that's not localized at this point, but we will be looking into, is the admin side, the back end. So, that's the one piece, but the host tools and your attenders as they come, we have multiple churches from all over the world that are using it in multiple languages.
Holland asks, we are on the original platform. Are the new upgrades retroactive?
Yeah, so they're talking about, we have a version 3 and a version 4. So we are looking right now to migrate the version 3, version 4. We as a church are on version 3, so we're excited. In the next few weeks, we're going to be migrating to this new version 4. There will be some differences, but the exciting thing about version 4, I told you sort of the overview: stability, scalability, simplicity. It's going to be a lot easier for you all to get on and be a part of. The scalability, it was a huge piece. So thank you for those that were on version 3. It's amazing how it's grown before COVID-19 and how churches use it. I mean, I'm telling you guys, it is, God is at work. He does what he does. This is just a tool, but it's amazing to see how churches are grabbing onto it. So that when you go to version 4, the reason we created it, there'll be more features and they'll be faster because of the way we built it from the ground up. So you will see a lot of those features, and if you're version 3 and you want to write, I would love to hear any of those things that's like a priority that you'd love to see, because that's part of my role. So Brandon@Life.Church. So there's everyone if you want it. That's just my first name @Life.Church if you have any questions. But there will be those features. That's our idea to be in there. But hopefully that helps answer. Let me know if I need to go further.
Great. Stephen asks, are there any paid features on Church Online platform?
It's all free. So at this point, I know some people might ask that to say, hey, can we have more? What does that look like? So any of those kinds of ideas, could we, customize it ourselves or do some of those things? So those are things we're looking at, but we have a team here. We talked about our leader, Craig, and our directional leadership team. I just want you to know that as expenses, it's been a unique time. Our expenses for the Church Online platform went up, and we gladly serve the church that way, because this is a return on investment that is what we look for. So hopefully that our heart as a product team is that every feature that we hope that it will be like anything that you would like to see, again, you can write me. We'd love to just continue to do that, but it's always going to be free, forever free.
Just one more question. One person asked, I tried signing up, but my church doesn't have a website. How can I sign up?
Well, you don't need a website for your church. That's awesome. You're going to have a Church Online platform before you have a church website. But all you need is the name, right? So it will actually create the website for you. If you look at it will give you the .online.church. So your name, and so you just got to be sure that it's a unique name, and that will tell you during the sign-up process. And once you have that, you'll get your website. Now, for those that want to change it or do a redirect, you can do that as well. But everyone will have that .online.church tied to your name, so you'll have a website. So that'll be great.
Thank you. So I'm getting quite a lot of questions. So I'm going to try to get all the questions answered that are related to the topic that we're on. And then maybe afterwards, we can do like a general overview of all the questions that we have that any of the panelists can answer. But I'm going to turn it back to Doug again, and then we can continue with our conversation.
Awesome, thanks. All awesome. Chris Griffin, Worship Creative Director at Church of the Highlands. Another amazing resource for building a house is the Growth Track. And I've had the unique privilege of getting to know, actually the funny thing is I met Chris at NAMM. How about that, Wayne? And we sat with Mike Ross from Sweetwater in a hotel lobby for 3 hours talking about church and God and mentorship, and it was just an amazing opportunity to have that in the framework of NAMM. So there you go. He's one of my closest friends. He's a brilliant guitar player. He's a brilliant leader, and his team has just done amazing things in this season. So rather than me tell the story, I'm going to let you just kind of hear from the man himself. Chris, take it away.
Hey, Kristian, it's great to see you. Doug was educating me how to do interviews for part of Leader Magazine, and Kristian, the first interview that I've ever done, and they actually do it in reverse. So Kristian answers the questions, and then you go back and you ask a question to the answers. That was interesting. And then George, I'm so thankful to spend some time with you last summer. That was fun, so thank you. And worship, CCLI. Yes. Frame of so guys, my role is are you me? Hey.
Sorry, guys, about the technical difficulties. I'm gonna ask. Maybe we can answer one question while we're working this out.
Wayne?
Yes.
I've got him on speakerphone. Here we go. Chris, go for it.
Okay. Well, let's see. There's a little delay here, but
Mute your computer speakers.
let's see. No, that's not doing it.
Okay. Let me make sure that. Oh, I'm creating the loop. I don't know if I can. You know what? Oh, I got it. Chris, call into the meeting only on an audio call. Don't do it with video. We're going to lose your video, but call in on an audio call. You can. Okay. So with that link, you can do it via phone.
Yep. Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Okay, great. Bye-bye. Did anybody say something about streaming not being friendly? Come on. So he's going to call in just a second. I think I'm going to see if he can get back on within the next 30 seconds. And if not, then we're going to hand it off to Shannon. But while we're kind of in this little in-between thing, good, my audio's up. One of the reasons that I was so excited that Shannon was going to be part of this is that there are some verticals in ministry that are kind of the forgotten verticals in the streaming world. And so children's ministry and women's ministry. And I'm kind of blowing my own setup. There we go. Chris. Uh-oh. All right. Oh, he's calling with his iPhone. Go for it. Go.
How's the audio now? Can you hear me now?
Much better.
Is that okay? Can you guys hear me?
Sounds great.
Okay. All right. Great. Yes. Doug, thank you so much for the intro, and thank you, Kristian. It was great to get to hang out with you a few weeks ago, and I was saying on a muted call that Doug was educating me on how to do an interview in reverse. So I've been helping him with this Worship Leader magazine, and Kristian was the first interview. So Kristian answers the questions, and then you come back and you create the momentum by asking the question with the same phrasing that he answers. So it's an interesting trick that Doug was educating me on. And then George, it was so great to spend some time with you last summer. Thank you so much for having Highlands Worship to CCLI and doing some acoustic recordings. So that was a ton of fun. Just a quick overview. My team does music content that comes out of the church. So that could be original music, that could be music under video, that could be all the tracks and the different things, Christmas, Easter, all the big conferences, anything that's music content that's coming out of my team. And about 10 weeks ago, we were really wanting to add what we call assets to our audio releases. So we were wanting to add video and things to that because when we look at the metrics, we're learning that people are they engage so much more, 2 and 3 times as much when you're adding video with your audio. And so we have an amazing team that's in-house and a creative team, but they're very busy doing other things for the church. And so we started doing some of these things our own and having a lot of fun with it. And that kind of uniquely set us up for what's happening now. So 4 weeks after we started dabbling in that, the virus hit, but we were uniquely suited to go and take some of these new skills that we've learned and put that into implementation. So we're doing lots of online services. We're also facilitating for different ministry departments, kids, college, students, and we're doing that in a variety of ways, and we even by age demographic. So if it's a Sunday service, you may shoot in a different frame rate, or if it's a kids, or a student ministry, you may shoot in a frame rate that looks more cinematic. So from the video end, we're doing some interesting things, but from the audio end, we're learning that now that is the perception of your church. And so from an audio angle, we are a couple tricks of the trade. So we're recording our services, and then we're taking and tuning those vocals from the service. We're dropping those back in and then mixing in post. We're sending that mix to a guy in Nashville named Nathan Danzler that does mastering for us. And he's working very closely with us to figure out what are the algorithms of Facebook, YouTube, online streaming, how hot can you get the volume? What are the things that you can really do to make the most impact for the listener at home? And so in addition to that, when we're mixing, we have several people that are using an app called Audio Movers, and it's streaming what's happening from our live mix. And they're listening either on a handheld phone device or a MacBook or listening from a television, and they're telling us, hey, this is how the person at home is going to perceive this when it's mixed and mastered. And so we're doing that, sending that to master, and then re-uploading that audio to video just to create a more quality service for us. So those are just a couple of the things that we're doing right now. And thank you guys for allowing me on the call. It's a real blessing, and sorry for the delay and the audio issues, but thank you so much for having me.
Great. I have a few questions that maybe all of the panels or some of them can answer. Kendrick wanted to ask, our church is experiencing 5 to 7 second delay when streaming to Facebook or YouTube. Can the delay time be reduced?
Wayne, I'll jump in for that. I'm not sure if the delay time can be reduced. We're actually recording our services on Saturday to give us time to do post editing and production, and then we're posting them on Sunday. We're also using multiple platforms to make sure that we're not having bandwidth or issues for the viewers. So we are on Facebook Live, YouTube, Instagram, and our website, our church website.
Great. We have one more question. Jan wanted to ask, can you guys suggest any equipment needed for small churches to get started with video streaming?
I know companies like Sweetwater put together some bundles on their website, and there is a ton of recommendations out there. I know on our website we posted some links, and I think Worship Musician, Doug, if you want to talk about, you put together some stuff as well, right? So
we put together the streaming handbook that has some suggestions that I'm not going to go to that document. That'll kind of help out. The other thing is, in that document, I also placed a really great Facebook resource. And let me just give the name for anybody that doesn't want to go to my Google document. There we go. Here we go. It is the church live streaming Facebook group. And like I went in and I've been streaming 3 nights in a row. I put in about 12 hours of streaming this week. It's been full on. And I went in there and I'm like, oh, this is a deep group. So I'm going to be spending a bunch of time there. And it looks like, they're a really, really nice group of people with a tremendous amount of depth of field. And the other thing that was really nice about it is I didn't see the snarky kind of like, oh, you're the newbie, we're going to devour you like a shark. And they seem to be really knowledgeable. And so what I'm going to keep doing is this document's going to be a living resource. I will take a moment and say that, each issue with WM, Worship Musician, we're continuing to step further and further into serving the house of worship in this area. We know it's a valuable area to serve people, and we're just doing the best that we can. And we will continue to review specific pieces of gear and bring people in, and that includes manufacturers. We don't play favorites, but at the same time, we also know that there are a number of manufacturers that have a lot of skin in the house of worship game, which we really appreciate. And you know what? If they show us favor, we like to show them favor as well. It's the right way to do things. So, boom.
Can I add one comment to that, which I'd love to? And I think there's a ton of incredible gear out there, incredible resources. I think it would be a shame if anybody listening to this didn't take the chance to communicate their message to their community for lack of gear or lack of resources. And I think right now I'm seeing churches crave connection, maybe even more than content. And I think you can get on a Zoom call like this. You can do a Facebook Live using your mobile phone. I did an experiment a couple of weeks ago. Could I create a live stream using just the gear that I could find here in my home office in the south of England, just to connect? So I think there is a lot of resources out there, tons of tutorials, but don't let the lack of gear or the lack of knowledge put you off being able to put your voice out to your community to connect with right now. I think it's probably more valuable. Wayne, back to you, sorry.
Okay, I'm going to actually jump in here. Can I mention a brand just because coincidentally? Okay, so I was told by my partner in crime in streaming world, Andrew Bonica, that with a phone and this dongle and a Helix, you can use the microphone input on Helix and you can use the audio processing to have a guitar, which literally means you've got a streaming studio with this in a Helix. That's rocking. So just saying. All right, are we good to move on to Shannon?
Well, I do want to bring up one point, and it kind of goes to the previous one, is, you know, most churches in the U.S., when you look at it demographically, are 200 and below, and that goes true for around the world. So I think there's a couple ideas that were brought up here. Chris brought up one, is embrace the idea of pre-production, no matter what size you are. And this thing right here has everything you need to do if you embrace pre-production. It's got iMovie, it's got everything you kind of need. And Doug's right, you know, a cheap little thing that comes with your phone with a 3.5, you can get decent audio in it. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. It's just more about process and maximizing the tools you have. But a lot of us are gearheads, so admittedly, we can always look for the new toy, but a lot of you have everything you need to start streaming right in your pocket.
Yep. Yep. Okie dokie. Shannon, I've been kind of very patiently waiting to get to you because I think, to me, in this meeting, you represent one of the most important segments. We are so focused on the Sunday message that kids ministry, a lot of people that don't have kids, happens in some other room. But it's a huge part of what the church is doing to raise up the next generation. And it's very easy. Oh, they're just kids. But they're getting fed on a weekly basis. Their needs, arguably, if you think about a small plant has a lot greater needs than a big tree. Can withstand seasons in ways that it's just different. So in the midst of getting the Sunday service online, there are all these other needs, including women's ministry, where, you know, dudes are kind of like, you know, I have more guitars than, well, I don't have more guitars than George, but we have a gentle competition. We relate differently. Women have this interrelation that, especially in this season, is really hard. So I'm really believing you're going to rock like the rock star that you are, and just kind of share your heart on all of this. Let me give the formal introduction. Shannon Scott is the Associate Executive Pastor at Church of the City it's not Nashville, it's Franklin, Tennessee. So with that, Shannon, please riff.
Well, you know, Brandon said, his team said, and you're going on that. Why? I actually think I beat him on that, of why I would be on a music merchants podcast webinar. I do have the privilege of being on staff as a children's pastor and women's pastor at our church, but my background is actually event production, live events, worship leading. I'm married to a professional musician who, not fortunately, but fortunately for me, his entire touring calendar was canceled. And so now I have my own in-house production guru for this season of online and streaming church. This may not be a popular opinion, but it is a very deeply held opinion for me. This season is so intentional in the sovereignty of God for some things that are being shaken out, revealed, created in this season. And so we are asking ourselves as a team 2 questions every day, multiple times a day. Number one, what don't we miss from the pre-COVID season? What are we fine to never have come back? And that could vary from you know, corporate standpoint, ministry standpoint, personal standpoint, but that list of things that I don't miss from the previous season as a children's pastor is pretty large. But then the second question is, what will I miss when this season is over? Like, what have we discovered in this season, in the way that we are reaching people and in the way that they're responding, that is changing some of the paradigm of our assumptions of the people that we were ministering to, adults, children, and everyone in between. But secondly, what you said, Doug, is so true. The people that children's pastors and children's ministry leaders are engaging with and pouring into now are the people we once were if we grew up in faith. And maybe the people we wished we had been if we didn't grow up in faith. And so what we are doing in this season is so important, because this season of children's ministry will be the season of people probably that are the only people to have ever been through a pandemic in children's ministry. We will probably not see this again. So the way that we relate to them is important. And for us, as we're on week 7 of this and are just learning out of a fire hydrant all the time, the thing that I would say specifically in a children's ministry context, and to any of the people on this webinar, either musicians for the main service or service programming people, production people in general, if you haven't yet reached out to the children's ministry people in your church to say, how can we serve you? Maybe now that we've gotten our feet under us a little bit, this would be the time to do it. Because uniquely, we as children's ministry people can't go straight to the kids. I can't tell the 5-year-olds to jump on a Zoom call and us just keep rolling. We have to go through parents, through adults to get to kids. And so the people that have been doing the main service all this time are the people best positioned to help us do that. Specifically with women, something that we've tried is we have gone to a video podcast. We always wanted to launch a podcast. We never had time. And so in this season was the perfect time to do it, but we did it via video because as women, we're very tactile and visual, and we want to see all the hand motions and the expressions and see the faces and the whole deal. It's why you see all the women doing the live Instagram videos. So we've gone to a video podcast, but it's so simple. 2 people in our respective living rooms. We're Zooming, but QuickTime Player is recording the whole thing in the background. And then we're also recording it via voice memo on our phones. And we've got our Bluetooth headphones in. Then my sweet husband is going in post and putting all that together and lining up all the tracks and ensuring that we don't have the skips and the whatever. The rest of it is as authentic and reachable as it possibly can be. And we let all the fancy stuff be on the back end that nobody knows about. They just think our internet is that good and that quality, and that our HD quality is that good. So that's an option for reaching the women, especially, is do it visually and then have the fancy production in the background and let it feel super accessible. For kids, we have learned from a resourcing standpoint that it is quality over quantity. Every single vein of things that those kids were involved in pre-COVID is coming up with ways to impact them. So their dance studios pushing out content, the school system is pushing out content, the camp that they probably can't go to this summer is pushing out content. So for us, it's not our responsibility as the church to give them as much content as humanly possible, because as parents and as a parent of children, I can say, I'm overwhelmed enough with the amount of engagement my kids have to do online now. The church needs to be the place that I'm going for equipping and resourcing on discipling my kids. We believe parents are the primary spiritual influencers of their children, positively or negatively. And so our goal as the church is to partner with parents and resource them and equip them for conversations about spirituality with their kids. Are we providing fun stuff and posting the content of the curriculum online? Because amazingly, our content curriculum people have made it copyright free and in this season, yes. But what is our plan and how do we filter what we're pushing out to parents? This is to help you in your role as the spiritual leader of your kids. So that looks like a parenting podcast to us. That looks like a resource that helps them have a conversation about the gospel, because now they're in a home with their kids on Easter and they're not taking them to church for someone else to tell their kids the gospel. It also looks like, what will this next season, when we go back to normal, whatever that will look like, What will that look like in the next season? Well, that looks like maybe the right move isn't parents walk into church, drop their kids in an environment and don't see them for the next 2 hours and then pick them up after the fact. And hopefully we hand them something that tells the parent what we taught them. Maybe that looks like an opportunity for parents and kids to experience something together, because that's what's happening every Sunday. We've also, as a church, added a kids element to our Sunday morning main service broadcast. And every Sunday I get up and take 5 minutes and I know what the pastor's talking about. I've boiled it down for the kids and I present it for the kids. And I even teach a memory verse that mom and dad are learning at the same time, motions and everything. I don't know that that would have ever happened pre this season, but in this season and realizing our families are all gathering around their TV together on Sunday morning to watch the service, why wouldn't we pay attention to the fact that there are kids in the room? So that's something we'll want to hold for the next season. I could talk about this all day, but for us, the basic thing is just because we can push a bunch of content doesn't mean we should. Let's stay in our lane and push the best content, the most impactful content for this season, and hope that that rises to the top of what makes an impact on families.
Thank you, Shannon. If anybody has any questions about just live streaming for children's ministries or women's ministry, please send them my way and we can get Shannon to answer the questions. But I have a few general questions that maybe any of the panelists can answer. Matthew wanted to ask, what is the best platform or procedure for making sure public domain songs are not flagged and removed? I have had experience hosting videos on unlimited storage on Google Drive and providing a public link. If there are no guarantees elsewhere for not being flagged and removed, is Google Drive hosting a good solution, or is there another way?
Bueller?
George?
George?
So this isn't so much a licensing question, is how aggressive certain platforms' content ID systems are. So again, I mentioned when I spoke that, for public domain songs, there might be arrangements of public domain songs that other rights holders have uploaded, and that they're doing the claims on just because it, melodically matches enough to flag a content ID. There was also another related question on there, Wayne, I saw about copyright claims and then someone potentially getting strikes on those. Yeah, the easiest path is just to allow the content owner, if it is their content, to monetize it. Sometimes this is on an automated basis, and sometimes they do have people that are actually looking at that content and making claims on it as well that gets flagged for them to review. So, at the end of the day, they want their music out there, but they also, for their songwriters, is their fiduciary responsibility, want to make sure that they're monetizing it for their songwriters and creators.
Great. We have one question for Shannon. Brian wanted to ask, where can he access copyright-free kids materials that you mentioned?
Well, there are a lot of options for copyright-free children's curriculum. We are subscribers to a particular curriculum, and because we subscribe to that curriculum, they have made their content able to be put on websites and put on Instagram and however we need to use it digitally in this season, which is not usually a part of our contract. Do I say the name of the curriculum, or should I not say the name of the curriculum?
That's fine.
Okay. We use Orange curriculum for children's ministry. And so they have made all of their content for their subscribers able to be just pushed in any, we can email it, we can post it on Instagram, we can stick it on our website, and it is in just unlimited ability to do so until such time as copyright comes back in and we have to pull it down.
Great.
I would say, just so you're aware that out on the open network, it's not just Life.Church, but there are full kids curriculum that is both elementary and younger. That is complete, and it's obviously it's free, and churches are able to use it, and definitely during this time, for online. So So there's some places you could look there that I believe some other churches that create some kids that use that platform that you could check out some kids curriculum.
I have one more question for Shannon, and then we'll move on to Doug. Elliot wants to ask regarding children's ministry, love the point about quality over quantity. Still about how much content is going out each week for your church?
We were sending a weekly email on Thursdays that had all of the preschool content, so their Bible story, a parent talking sheet, as well as kind of devotional content that the family could do together. And then we did the same thing for elementary, that block of things, and then the same thing for our special needs community. We have a pretty robust special needs ministry at our church. We have now this week made the decision to do something we always wished we had had time to do, which is move all of that content to a family web page. And so now parents are able to go to our church name /family, and with the click of a button, see all of the resources. All the videos are embedded there, but there's also PDFs if they want to print out activity sheets. We also, I failed to mention, for the Sunday morning service, we create an activity sheet for kids every week that they have my little kid moment in the service, but then for the rest of the service, they're able to work on an activity sheet that's going along with everything the pastor is preaching to help kids stay engaged. And that is all located on that family webpage. So we were just sending like an email in MailChimp that had a bunch of hyperlinks they could click on, and now we're moving that to a family webpage. But there's enough for them to stay connected on a Sunday morning. And then it's something that parents can use during the week to resource, to give their kids curriculum videos to watch, or Bible stories, or whatever might serve the family the best.
Thanks, Shannon. I'm going to hand it over to Doug.
Thanks. Awesome. Shannon, holy cow. Bruce, he's my leader. I can't call him my boss. He doesn't want me to call it, but he's texting me like, so exactly what I anticipated. Thanks so much. All right, I'm going to go really quickly because I want to leave a little room at the end. So I'm going to go fast and I'm going to go furious here. Strategy. That's where I live. I'm a retired worship and creative arts director at a small church. I've spent most of my time at small churches. What you need to do now strategically, what you're going to need to do as we transition into this next phase, and what you need to do to future-proof yourself. Short version is, most of us got caught without a plan B. That is not really, there was a guy named Noah. Well, everybody else was going, this guy's a whack job. He's like, I actually have a plan B. He was ready. We need our next plan B such that the next time something like this happens, we don't get caught without a plan B. Call it your plan C. Streaming checklist, make one. Make sure you go down that streaming checklist every week. And just know, like I mentioned before, it's fickle. You can do all your testing and it still goes upside down. So what does that mean? There is one place, and that place is a website. Shannon, I love the fact that you talked about website intelligence. Church of the City, right? .com/family. I know, I can remember that URL. Having at the very top of your page what is happening about your Sunday service. The website is your hub. Not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody's on Instagram, not everybody's on YouTube. Website, boom. If you can, embed whatever it is that you're going to do, even if it's the rebroadcast of your streaming service on your website. All the links to everywhere else, but let everybody know through messaging, it all happens at the website. Strategically moving forward, not doing that, it's your choice. So the thing is the other thing about having it next to your website, your giving is right there. The other thing is my small little church, they're doing this really cute thing, QR code embedded in the stream. Actually, they're uploading, so they're not even streaming it, which is another thing. Streaming is not necessarily the answer. There's a lot of intelligence about pre-recording your service, getting all your great edits, just exactly like what you're talking about, Shannon. Get the best of what you got, put it together and make it an awesome presentation so you're not dependent on Facebook. There are other platforms. So I'm going to move right on here. Future-proofing, yep. Serving digitally. Again, who are the different verticals you need to serve? If you're not making a list of all the people you need to be serving, may I suggest doing so? Brand building. Okie dokie, here we go. This is what we used to be, and it worked for a long time. And one day I said to my leader, you know, we need to do a radical redesign and look as hip as the people we want to cover so we're relevant. Churches and logos. Okie dokie. Let's see if I can actually get my presentation working here. So I don't know about you, but I've seen a few bad church logos that are truly and epically cringeworthy. And we want to be socially relevant. Here's the deal. When somebody's looking at your church posts online, they're seeing Starbucks and Nike and all these brands. And whether you like it or not, your brand in the marketplace is next to other brands. And if you look particularly frumpy, it really shows up when people see that on a feed. So I want to actually show a really nice education of one of my favorite brands. And let's see if I can get my screen share going. Okay, God willing, let this work. Share my screen. Oh, there we go. There we go. And here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, that should be the Elevation logo version 1. That's kind of the old kind of app icon that we used to see. Now it's completely dated. Our friends at Elevate. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Let me get to the streaming. There we go. All right. So now they've gone to this cool stream down. Again, going back, no longer big circle orange thing with the gradient. But they were able to take the old logo and transition it to the new one. It's reversible. And then when you look at it side by side, it totally works. Needless to say, our buddy Stephen Furtick knows what he's doing. Having a great brand in your logo is strategically important, so when people see you online, they can identify you. They know who you are. A couple of things that you might do as you begin to go, hey, maybe our logo does need a refresh. Put together a team of people. Make sure you include your creatives. Do not leave your creatives out, please. Put together a giant collection of logos. Find out what you like. Create a target of what it's going to be. Come up to some agreement, and then go down from that list. The other thing is we have lived in what I refer to, and Chris and I have talked about this, so I'm not kind of on my own personal mission here. We live in a church bubble sometimes. We're so engrossed in the Sunday to Sunday cycle that we've missed all these things that we're discovering in the season. And by virtue of the fact that we're discovering a lot of ways to make church better, well, it wasn't COVID, it was us. We didn't actually take the time to strategically go, what are we doing that just doesn't make sense? Does it really make sense that we don't have a plan B, that if we can't get into our building on Sunday, we don't have a plan of what we're going to do? If we don't have the ability to put giving next to our online messaging, that's not who we're supposed to be. Now, the other thing is that we want to present ourselves to the community. So we have been this inward facing thing. And this is what the great thing about the website enables us to do, is the hub for being able to send a message to the community that we're here to help. And it's a great place to be able to do that. It's a great place to put, hey, we're doing this in our community for our community. The last thing I want to say about this is that we have the ability to attract people in numerous ways. Now more than ever, when people church shop, they virtual church shop. And this should be terrifying for some of us. It means they come and kick the tires at our website that is not mobile friendly. They come and kick the tires and they look at the quality of our stream. Now, as much as the streaming quality doesn't matter, it kind of does, which is why owning your technology matters. And guess what? People are now virtually intelligent, which means as they look at a church that's engaged, they're going to look at the verticals and see how we're doing. They're going to look at finding a church in a different way. And that includes people that are not necessarily in your geographical area. So it means having a strategy about all these things. And again, to wrap that back up with a bow, a strategy now, what and how, the strategy for the era of transition of how we're going to figure this stuff out, and finally future-proofing such that we've got a much better way of doing church. So we're not stuck into the Sunday to Sunday bubble where we just do the same thing over and over without thinking, it's like, does this really make sense to keep doing the things the way we're doing them? All right, I'm done. Questions?
Thanks, Doug. We have quite a few questions. I'm just going to try to get the panelists to answer as many as possible, but we're going to have a hard stop at 11:30. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to add them into the Q&A section. but I'll try to get as much in as possible. So Stacy wanted to ask, is it possible to combine a stream for the worship team who are at different locations, and they're not on campus per COVID-19? What type of hardware and licenses would you cover this type of setup?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, I can say it again. Is it possible to combine a stream where the worship team are at different locations and not on campus per COVID-19? What type of hardware and licenses would cover this type of setup?
I get the question. So part of it's a technical one that I don't think anyone solves. So each worship musician is at a different location and they want to all play together live, which is unfortunately, unless anyone's seen some miraculous thing that gets rid of latency on the internet, that
actually Chris has solved that. They've got that figured out.
Really, Chris has got it all figured out. Great. I mean, let me become helping you become a founding member of that company, whatever that is. But the challenge is that's the pre-production thing. I think that some of that stuff happens in a pre-production basis where they play along with the track or a guide, and then they put it together so it feels that way. In terms of the licensing, no matter how you put it together, whether that's the people together or separately that you've composited later on in rebroadcast, it's the same set of licensing and considerations that go into it. Is it an original performance without underlying master components? That's one thing, and then there's a second set of rights that come in if there's the if you're using tracks in conjunction with that as well. So the licensing doesn't change at all. I think it's just more the mode. And for doing it live, there's no technology that I know of that lets it not sound like a hot mess. I mean, I'll let everyone else speak to that, but.
Yeah, a couple quick thoughts just on social distancing, I guess. So, we practice, I guess it's our, state rule of no more than 10 people in an area at one time. So on our stage, that would be 9 musicians and the speaker, which has forced us to scale down our worship team in some areas, but it's worked for us. Another idea, again, might go back to the pre-production, to where if you wanted to record at one location with your video, with your worship team, and then you could combine it to a sermon. We're doing that some, but then, like George was saying, if you wanted to do some sort of virtual band, I've seen several of those out on YouTube that you could just pre-record each part and then combine it together. That would probably give you the best quality. Regardless.
Great. Antonio wants to ask, so the iPhone is a great piece of equipment for the church to start live streaming, but what's the recommendation for a church who is using iPhones but is ready to upgrade their live stream system?
I'm going to jump in real quick. I would suggest watching all the video influencers that are on YouTube, the mirrorless DSLRs. That's the way to go. If I were going to equip a church, then it's a matter of looking at Sony. It's a matter of looking at Canon. It's looking at Nikon. Those are the leaders. You're going to spend a lot of money on glass. There's a great thing on the Church Online platform where they walk through a bunch of that stuff. It's a video that's in the handbook that we put together, and it's awesome. And you're going to spend some money, but you're going to get some amazing results.
Yeah, there's also the other piece of that, and that's going from that DSLR or home video camera or whatever into something. This is where the gaming industry actually is useful to the church, and that's the gaming industry has a ton of these intermediary video capture devices that literally allows you to take, say you have like a 4K Canon home prosumer video camera, you can put one of those between that and your computer, and it shows up like a webcam. And you can bring in a secondary audio source from your board. So you can scale up pretty cost effectively, but you have to look outside of church-only solutions because there's people have solved different versions of this problem, gaming being one. And so it's look for video capture devices that kind of serve other markets as well. So.
Great. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to hand it off to Zach. Jason wants to ask, will the nature of licensing change in the future to accommodate more financially viable options for small and medium-sized churches? What will streaming licensing look like post-COVID?
No one knows. I'm going to say that one right there. You know, it's all this balance between what law allows, what rights holders grant, right? To then make sure that there's fair and equitable economics for all parties involved, right? Because there's no point in pricing music out of the point of being used, right? So it's an ongoing discussion between a lot of parties, and then there's obviously the legislative piece, which kind of overarches all that. I wouldn't expect it to be quick. You know, if anyone followed the MMA, how many years and versions of legislation it took for that change to happen. But it's definitely an active conversation, I will say, from this end between us and publishers and labels and everyone else to understand, really, you know, this isn't going to go away. So what's the best way to serve, but to serve all parties involved, churches, writers, and all those who help facilitate worship at every level. So I wish it was an easy answer and we could solve it next week, but it takes a little bit of dialogue with a lot of people.
Can I hop in with a quick thing? George, thank you so much for everything that CCLI has done to make this process manageable for churches. Like, seriously, without what you guys do and your hard work, this would be a nightmare. And to everybody that joined us on the panel and everybody and all our friends at NAMM, thank you.
All right, I'll just hand it off to Zach. We're about at the end of our time for our webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. Just on behalf of NAMM, the National Association of Music Merchants, I want to extend big thanks to Mr. Doug Doppler and the rest of the worship musician team for putting this together. Wayne, thank you for everything you did to make this happen. And big time thanks to our panelists. This is, you know, this is a group of people that should not all fly on the same plane together. Pretty great having everybody here. And of course, thanks for everyone who is part of this webinar. Incredible information. We're so glad we could present this. So on that note, I'm going to hand it back to Doug for any closing comments.
As I forget to unmute myself, we're so thankful to have the relationship that we have with NAMM and the manufacturers. It's a very different era in our relationship, working with the brands that are doing so much to support the house of worship. And it's really neat to see very mainstream brands understanding our needs and wanting to understand them. So we just are so thankful for NAMM for actually being that connective membrane that's helping that happen. So again, thanks to everybody at NAMM and all these great manufacturers. Zach, Wayne, you guys are awesome, and to all the NAMM team, and again, to all the speakers, and to you, thanks so much. God bless.